Now we're going to talk about a little bit of entertainment news. It has to do with streaming music online, and Thom Yorke, who is the frontman of Radiohead, is livid about it. In fact, if you watch the next video, you'll know why.
Music streaming services like Pandora and Spotify have tried to bridge the gap between artists who want people to stop downloading their music for free and those who want music to be more easily shared and accessible. Although not all musicians agree. According to musical magazine NME, Radiohead frontman Thom Yorke pulled his latest album with supergroup Atoms for Peace off Spotify, citing low royalties, and then he went on to say that the popular streaming service is, quote, the last dying fart of a dying corpse. He also told Mexico's Sopitas, quote, I feel like as musicians we need to fight the Spotify thing. Once that does finally die, which it will, something else will happen. Well, Spotify CEO Daniel Ek argues that the company's services could be more profitable than downloads.
All right, interesting. I actually want to give you guys his full quote so you guys get a sense of why he's so upset about this. He said, when we did the In Rainbows thing, he's referring to the album that he put out on his own website, and he allowed people to make donations for it. Fans paid whatever they felt appropriate for downloading the record. What was the most exciting was the idea that you could have a direct connection between you as a musician and your audience. You cut all of it out. It's just that and that. He's very eloquent. Like, I love Thom Yorke. Don't get me wrong. I love Radiohead, but I feel like his perspective on this is a little skewed. He says, and then all these fuckers get in the way, like Spotify, suddenly trying to become the gatekeepers to the whole process. So I think that's an interesting point, but to be fair, Spotify does pay royalties, a significant amount. In fact, last year they paid about $500 million to artists, and this year they're expected to spend another $500 million. So it's not like they just steal the music from the musicians and they allow us to listen to it for free. And when I think about my personal habits, and I'm not speaking for everyone that uses Spotify, I actually use Spotify to sample music. And if I really like the artist and I really like the album, I will download it on iTunes because I like having it on my iPod. I listen to it when I'm going on a run. That's just the way I like to consume my music. So I want to get your thoughts on this, John. You're not really much of a music guy. You've been open about that, but you do have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, I do not use Spotify. I'm a little bit familiar with it. I use Groove Shark, which seems pretty similar. I mean, you can listen to any song you want. I've never had to pay anything. I imagine they pay some sorts of royalties.
Oh yeah, of course.
But honestly, I don't put much value on music, and so the business model is not something I've thought about a lot. Thankfully for Thom Yorke and other musicians, I think that I am not exactly indicative of any rising trend. I think people still love music, and they want to find good bands, and they want to pay money for it. And while I love like what he says about how they went directly to their fans, and Louis C.K. is really big for doing that online with his comedy shows, and things like the Humble Bundle for gaming are ways for indie gaming makers to put out their stuff directly and you just contribute whatever you want. Those are all awesome ideas, and when they work, I think they work very well, but that's still a very small segment of the entire industry, and not everybody's Louis C.K. in comedy, and not everybody's Radiohead in music. And while Spotify seems like it has a lot of problems, the idea that any musician can just do what Radiohead does, I think that's kind of comical, and I don't know that that's actually a solution.
You make a very fair point there. I came across this one musician by the name of Oliver Tank, and he has very somber music that sometimes I like. I'm in the mood for. And I listened to some of his stuff on SoundCloud, and I loved it, so then I bought his music on iTunes. You know, so it's just, he's an unknown artist. No one knows him. He barely has any Twitter followers.
Yeah, he can put it up on his website, and no one will buy it.
No one will buy it.
I don't know anything about him. I'm just saying a person.
Exactly. Yeah. So it creates a platform where unknown artists might get a little bit of exposure. So I like that. And I think Thom Yorke is really looking at this through a very narrow perspective. Desi?
Well, I can totally understand where he's coming from. You know,
okay.
He knows that the music industry model has traditionally not paid artists what they're worth. You know, now eventually if they make it to some, you know, super huge status, some superstar status, then they do get paid a little bit more commensurate with what they've actually achieved. But the problem with the music industry is that their greed, I think, got ahead of them, and they ignored the opportunities to get in on the ground floor of making sure that people could get their new music and that they could also pay for it in a way. I think that that's why iTunes was so successful. I think people want to compensate the artists. I don't know of anybody who actually is like, you know, fuck the artists, we shouldn't pay them. Right. They should work for free. I don't know of anybody who feels that way. You know, not everybody can afford it. It's really hard to find new music. No, you don't, John.
John like halfway raised his hand, but in a joking way.
Maybe Ariana Huffington? Anyway. anyway.
Oh,
Go
well,
ahead.
see, yeah. But
Under
there you
that
go.
bus.
There's always a way that somebody will come up with something that is very creative and wonderful and new, and then another way that the suits will come in and try to make some money off of it and sort of
Right.
take over the delivery system. So, you know, we're in this brave new world of trying to get our music figured out, and the music industry on its, like he says, the last fart of a dying. I love that.
Yeah, that was a really interesting phrase.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy, what do you think about the music industry kind of failing to adapt to a new platform? I mean, we have the internet now where it's so easy to download music for free. So how do you change the model? How do you change the business model so people can still make money while doing what they love?
Well, you know, I don't, like John, I don't use Spotify. What do you use?
Groove Shark.
I use Boogie Whale, and so we all have our own thing. No, I use Pandora, which is very similar to Spotify. Correct?
Yes.
I've never used Spotify, but so what? What is even the difference?
So you download Spotify on your computer, similar to an app, basically.
Okay.
And you can search for a very specific song. You can listen to entire albums. The latest album that I bought was from this artist named Costanza,
Okay.
which is a weird name. But
I love them on
I think
Seinfeld.
she's from Brazil. And I heard one song of hers on satellite radio, and I was like, I'm going to check her out on Spotify. So I did. I really, really liked her stuff, so I downloaded her entire album. And you can listen to an entire album on Spotify as well.
So what is his he just doesn't think he's getting big enough royalties from Spotify?
He's saying they shouldn't have to go through this service that's acting as a gatekeeper for all of the musicians. They should be able to just independently put it out there, directly communicate with their fans instead of going through this service
then
at
he's
all.
not really making much sense. I don't think that doesn't make sense to me because like this is just another. That's like saying that'd be
The
like
radio.
That would be like Universal Studios saying, why does NBC have to be in between us and people watching our TV shows? It's like because they're the ones who bring it. There's just another way of bringing it. But that'd be like being angry at the radio.
And again-
wouldn't he be angry at the radio? What the fuck with this cave fuck doing up there?
And again, that's a fair point. And again, for someone like Thom Yorke, who has a huge band that's very well known, it might not be a problem to not have a middleman. But for a
Right.
lot of people, you need that middleman for the
Yes. Well,
exposure. And by the way, the
exactly.
front page of Spotify oftentimes will advertise a bunch of up-and-coming bands that I've never heard of. So all
Yeah,
of a
but
sudden,
are those bands getting paid? The new bands, are they making enough to survive on? And that seems to be what
I
his
make
main
money.
concern is about.
I think
those
his main
places-
concern
off
is
those
himself,
things.
to be
Well,
honest.
Sorry?
I feel like his main concern is himself.
I disagree in that area. We can disagree with his read on whether Spotify is good for them, but I do think that the point of him putting this out there is less about him worrying about Radiohead. I think he knows that they're doing okay. I think he does care about those. That's why he's putting out the message. He cares about those other musicians.
Some of the revenue models that I was
Yeah.
looking at, that some people are making, you know, $20 over an entire year as a
Yeah.
new artist, and that's after thousands and thousands of streams of their music. So what is the incentive for them to continue? How can they continue to pay their rent and be able to make the new music that we all love if they can't make a living, if
Well,
they're
we
only
know-
making $20 a year?
Can I just say this, that so I have a couple CDs that gets played on Pandora and whatever and Spotify and whatever. I get money for that now, and I didn't use that before that. I didn't. That was it. You sold them or you didn't sell them, and now I get money like residuals from all these places that didn't exist before. I think it's fantastic, and I'm wouldn't be a famous artist like Radiohead. You know, I'm pretty anonymous as it goes, and as far as on that level. So, and I still can make a lot of money off it. So, I think he's wrong here. I really do think he's wrong.
So you can speak from experience.
Yeah, I can speak from experience. It really helps I know young comics. They love it. You know, they can now make money off their stuff because it gets played, and also like XM and stuff like that. I get money from that. So I think it's great. And the more
Can I
exposure,
do something like that?
I'm actually going to talk to him after
yeah,
the show.
yeah, that sounds really good.
So it's really helpful.
All right, okay.
So I think he's completely wrong. Maybe he's out of touch. Maybe he's too far removed. Maybe he's been a millionaire for too long.
Out of touch.
I think he's a creep. He's a loser.
Good reference
Wrapped up at the
good
end.
reference to his song.